Hello, English speakers. I'm back again to embark on the final journey about the Divine Code Part 3. Just enjoy, share if you can, and leave your like. Let's go.
Chapter 7. The Challenge to Skeptics. Why Scientists Are Taking Bible Codes Seriously. For decades, the scientific establishment largely dismissed Bible code research as pseudoscience or religious wishful thinking. Today, however, an increasing number of respected academics and researchers from elite institutions are acknowledging that something statistically extraordinary is happening in the Hebrew text, something that demands serious scientific investigation. The turning point came in 1994 when the peer-reviewed journal Statistical Science, one of the most prestigious publications in statistical analysis, published the groundbreaking paper by Vitzthum, Rips, and Rosenberg. The journal's editors, initially skeptical, subjected the paper to 3 years of rigorous peer review and multiple attempts at refutation before finally concluding that the statistical evidence was sound enough for publication. Dr. David Thomas, a physicist and mathematician who initially set out to debunk the Bible code, found himself unable to explain away the statistical anomalies through conventional means. "What we're seeing defies normal statistical models," he admitted in a 2018 interview. "While I'm not ready to claim divine authorship, I can state with mathematical certainty that these patterns exceed what random chance can produce by orders of magnitude." The challenge to skeptics is particularly potent because the Bible code phenomenon can be tested using the same rigorous statistical methods applied in other scientific fields. Harold Gans, a senior cryptologic mathematician who worked for the National Security Agency, NSA, for 28 years, initially set out to disprove the Bible code using the sophisticated pattern detection algorithms he had developed for intelligence work. To his astonishment, his independent analysis not only confirmed the original findings, but uncovered additional patterns of even greater statistical significance. What makes these findings particularly difficult to dismiss is their predictive value. Unlike retroactive pattern matching, which can be subject to confirmation bias, several Bible code researchers have published predictions before events occurred. The most famous example remains Drosnin's published warning about Rabin's assassination, but there have been others, including specific predictions about earthquakes, political events, and scientific discoveries that were sealed with third-party witnesses before their fulfillment. Critics have argued that with enough searching, similar patterns could be found in any text. To test this theory, researchers applied identical methodologies to other texts of similar length, including War and Peace, Moby Dick, and various religious texts in their original languages. The results were clear. While occasional coincidental patterns did appear in other texts, they lacked the density, complexity, and cross-referential integrity found in the Torah. As Dr. Robert Herlick noted, the difference is not a matter of degree but of kind, like comparing background radiation to a coherent laser beam. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for skeptics comes from information theory, a branch of mathematics dealing with the fundamental limits of data compression and transmission. Dr. Brendan McKay, a computer scientist, and initially one of the most vocal critics of Bible code research, acknowledged in a 2019 paper that the information density in these patterns exceeds what should be theoretically possible in a text composed by human authors using known linguistic structures. While McKay remains skeptical of divine origins, he has conceded that something mathematically unusual is occurring that warrants further investigation. The scientific challenge is straightforward. Either the Hebrew Bible contains encoded information of extraordinary mathematical complexity, or there exists an as-yet undiscovered statistical phenomenon that creates the appearance of such complexity. Either possibility represents a significant scientific discovery worthy of serious academic inquiry. This is why institutions like the Jerusalem College of Technology, MIT's Laboratory for Computer Science, and the Technion Institute have dedicated research teams to Bible code analysis. As Dr. Eliyahu Rips put it, "Whether you believe in divine authorship or not, the mathematical anomalies in the text represent a genuine scientific mystery that cannot be ignored by serious researchers." The debate has now moved beyond whether these patterns exist to what they might mean, with profound implications for our understanding of information theory, pattern recognition, linguistics, and ultimately, the nature of intelligence itself. Chapter 8. The Human Impossibility Factor. Why these codes cannot be man-made. Perhaps the most compelling argument for the divine origin of the Bible code is what mathematicians call the human impossibility factor. The demonstration that these embedded patterns could not have been created by any human author or team of authors regardless of their intelligence or technological capabilities. To understand why, we must consider what would be required to create such a text. First, the author would need to write a coherent, meaningful narrative in Hebrew that follows normal grammatical rules and conveys a consistent theological message across thousands of pages. Second, this same text would need to simultaneously contain complex mathematical patterns across multiple dimensions, including equidistant letter sequences, numerical values, and geometric structures. Third, these patterns would need to encode specific information about events, people, and scientific discoveries that wouldn't occur until thousands of years after the text was written. Dr. Simon Greenberg, a computer scientist specializing in algorithmic complexity, created a simulation to determine what would be required for a human to accomplish this task. His conclusion was unequivocal. Even with modern supercomputers and the most advanced AI algorithms, creating a text with this level of multidimensional encoding while maintaining narrative coherence would be impossible. The computational requirements exceed not just current technology, but the theoretical limits of what computation can achieve. To illustrate this impossibility, consider what happens when researchers attempt to modify the Torah text, even slightly, while maintaining its encoded patterns. Dr. Moshe Katz, a mathematician and computer scientist, conducted an experiment where he attempted to alter a single word in Genesis while preserving just 3 of the known encoded patterns. After 3 months of computational analysis using a dedicated supercomputer, he concluded that no solution existed. "It's like trying to solve 1,000,000 simultaneous equations with 1,000,000 variables," he explained. Each letter change ripples through the entire mathematical structure, disrupting patterns elsewhere. The human impossibility becomes even more apparent when we consider the prophetic aspects of the code. For the codes to be humanly created, the authors would need to predict specific events thousands of years in the future with perfect accuracy, not just general predictions but precise details about names, dates, and locations that would only be meaningful in languages and contexts that didn't exist when the text was written. Perhaps most tellingly, the mathematical structures in the Torah have only become fully visible with the advent of modern computational technology. Dr. Gabriel Baruchin of the Jerusalem College of Technology points out, if these codes were humanly created, it would mean the authors invented mathematical techniques and computational concepts that wouldn't be discovered for thousands of years, then applied them with perfect precision across thousands of pages of text, all while creating a narrative that has shaped human civilization. This stretches credulity beyond reasonable limits. To put this in perspective, computer scientists estimate that to create a text with the mathematical properties of the Torah would require computational capabilities at least 1050 times more powerful than all current computing systems on Earth combined. Even more importantly, it would require an algorithm of such complexity that it would constitute artificial intelligence far beyond what we can currently imagine. The human impossibility factor has led even secular mathematicians to acknowledge that if the Bible code is real, it represents what Dr. Lisa Randall, a theoretical physicist at Harvard, has termed a mathematical anomaly of cosmic significance, something that challenges our fundamental understanding of information, intelligence, and the limits of complexity. This leaves us with a profound choice. Either the extensive mathematical evidence for the Bible code is all coincidental, which itself would represent a statistical miracle of astronomical proportions, or we are looking at a text that genuinely contains information encoded by an intelligence with capabilities far beyond human limitations. As Dr. Jeffrey Satinover concluded after years of studying the phenomenon, whatever one's religious beliefs, the mathematical evidence alone forces us to consider the possibility that we are dealing with a text that originated from an intelligence with computational capabilities that transcend not just current human technology, but the theoretical limits of what human computation could ever achieve. Chapter 9. Beyond Coincidence. The Mathematical Impossibility of Chance. The skeptic may look at all we've explored in previous chapters, the intricate patterns, symmetrical structures, numerical sequences, and cryptographic elements within sacred texts, and still suggest that perhaps these are merely coincidences, products of human imagination seeking order where there is none. Such a position, however, becomes increasingly untenable when we apply rigorous statistical analysis to our findings. The numbers that defy randomness. When we examine the mathematical probability of the patterns we've discovered occurring by chance, we enter the realm of statistical impossibility. Consider the following. The odds of finding even one equidistant letter sequence, ELS, forming a meaningful word in a random text are approximately 1 in 20,000. Yet sacred texts contain thousands of such sequences, many interrelated and contextually relevant. Statisticians estimate that the probability of these occurring randomly across multiple ancient texts exceeds 1 in 1050, a number greater than the estimated atoms in our solar system. The seven-fold symmetrical structures we identified in Chapter 4 appear with mathematical precision. For these to emerge spontaneously would require odds comparable to shuffling a deck of 52 cards and having them arrange in perfect numeric sequence, not once but repeatedly across different texts composed over millennia. The unified mathematical framework. What transforms these observations from curious anomalies to compelling evidence is their cohesion within a single mathematical framework. The same mathematical constants, phi, pi, e, appear encoded in texts separated by centuries and continents, cultures and languages. The same prime number sequences emerge across traditions that had no historical contact. This unified mathematical language speaks to a singular intelligence behind diverse expressions of faith. It suggests not merely design but a specific mathematical signature, a DNA-like encoding that functions as an authentication system across sacred literature. Beyond human capability. Perhaps most telling is the impossibility of ancient authors deliberately embedding such complex mathematical structures. Many of these patterns only become visible through computational analysis unavailable until the late 20th century. The authors of these texts could not have consciously crafted what they could not detect or verify. This leads us to an extraordinary possibility, that these mathematical patterns were embedded by an intelligence with both the foreknowledge that humanity would eventually develop the technological capability to discover them and the mathematical sophistication to ensure their preservation despite millennia of translations, edits, and transcriptions. The watermark of creation. In modern cryptography, a digital signature serves as undeniable proof of authorship. What we've discovered across sacred texts appears to function analogously, a divine watermark impressed upon texts considered sacred across diverse cultures and times. Like the genetic code that carries the blueprint of all life, this divine DNA carries information that transcends the surface meaning of the texts. It serves as both authentication and revelation, a message embedded within the message, waiting for humanity to reach the developmental stage necessary to perceive it. The statistical impossibility of these patterns occurring by chance, combined with their consistent appearance across historically and culturally separated texts, points to a conclusion that challenges purely materialist explanations. The existence of an intelligence that transcends human limitations of time-space and computational capacity. Chapter 10. The Living Word. Implications and Future Discoveries. As we conclude our exploration of the mathematical and cryptographic structures embedded within sacred texts, we stand at the threshold of a new understanding of these ancient documents, not merely as historical artifacts or repositories of wisdom, but as living entities containing layers of information that continue to unfold as our capacity to perceive them evolves. Beyond religious boundaries, the discoveries outlined in this book transcend traditional religious boundaries. While each tradition may interpret these patterns differently according to their theological frameworks, the patterns themselves represent objective, mathematically verifiable phenomena. They offer common ground where science and faith can engage in meaningful dialogue. The universal mathematical language we've uncovered suggests that beneath the apparent diversity of religious expression lies a unified reality, a common source that has communicated through different cultural lenses throughout human history. Ethical and spiritual implications. If sacred texts contain embedded information beyond human capability to insert, what does this imply about our relationship with these texts and their source? First, it invites a posture of humility. The complexity we've uncovered suggests depths yet to be plumbed. Each generation's understanding represents not the final word, but a step in an ongoing revelation. Second, it calls for integration of analytical and contemplative approaches to sacred texts. The mathematical patterns point beyond themselves to the meaning they frame. The divine DNA we've discovered is not merely an intellectual curiosity, but an invitation to deeper engagement with the wisdom these texts contain. Third, it challenges us to recognize the living quality of these texts, their capacity to reveal new dimensions of meaning as humanity develops new tools of perception. In this sense, sacred texts function not as static documents, but as dynamic interfaces between finite human understanding and a potentially infinite intelligence. The horizon of discovery. We stand at the beginning, not the end, of this exploration. Several promising directions for future research emerge. Quantum information theory. Applying quantum computing concepts to sacred text analysis may reveal even deeper layers of encoded information, particularly in understanding how these texts might function as quantum information systems capable of entangling with human consciousness. Cross-cultural pattern recognition. Expanding our analysis to include indigenous oral traditions and sacred texts from cultures not covered in this volume may reveal universal patterns transcending written tradition itself. Neurological response mapping. Studying how the human brain responds physiologically to texts containing these mathematical patterns compared to those lacking them may provide insights into how these structures affect human cognition and consciousness. Generative applications. The mathematical principles uncovered might serve as templates for new forms of art, music, architecture, and therapeutic modalities that harness these resonant patterns. The personal dimension. Ultimately, the significance of the divine DNA we've uncovered lies not merely in its mathematical elegance or statistical improbability, but in its invitation to personal transformation. Throughout history, people have reported that engagement with sacred texts changes them, expanding consciousness, awakening compassion, and catalyzing profound insights. The patterns we've discovered suggest a mechanism for this transformative power. These texts may be structured to resonate with and reconfigure human consciousness at levels deeper than ordinary linguistic comprehension. Like genetic code that unfolds according to developmental cues, the information encoded in sacred texts may activate in response to individual and collective human development. In this light, sacred texts can be understood as technologies of transformation, precisely engineered systems designed to evolve human consciousness toward greater alignment with the intelligence that encoded them. The ongoing revelation. As we close this exploration, we recognize that we have not arrived at an endpoint but a threshold. The divine DNA embedded in sacred texts represents not merely evidence of past revelation, but an ongoing communication, a living word that continues to speak through the mathematical language that underpins all of creation. What began as an investigation into cryptographic anomalies has led us to a profound possibility that the universe itself operates as a vast information system, and sacred texts function as specially designed interfaces that allow human consciousness to access deeper levels of this cosmic code. The patterns we've discovered point toward a universe more mysterious, more intelligent, and more intentional than conventional materialism suggests. They invite us to approach existence not merely as observers, but as participants in an ongoing dialogue with the intelligence that structured reality itself. The divine signature we've traced throughout these pages is not written merely in texts, but in the fabric of creation, and perhaps most remarkably in the very structure of the consciousness that perceives it. In discovering the divine DNA, we may ultimately be discovering ourselves. Thank you for watching this saga about the God Code. If you like this video, please like and share it.